Alright, so I figured I'd start this video off just kind of reviewing the weekend's events since I wasn't able to do them as they happened. A little bit under the weather and had to deal with some other issues. But in any case, I saw the fights and I'll just do a rundown. Gervonta, the one Davis, defeating Guillermo Avila by knockout. He did a good job. He looked pretty good. I mean, Avila was a guy that he should have knocked out. I mean, he's a guy that's been knocked out before. Just kind of a journeyman level fighter. But we got to see Davis once again showing off a good technique and good power. I mean, good legitimate power. He got tagged a little bit himself, and he looked like he got winded once or twice in there as he was trying to bomb Avila out, which is fair. I mean, guys can get winded when they're just trying to go for the knockout in the way that he was. But, I mean, being that reckless against higher level guys is probably not the best idea, but then again, he is a young guy. He's trying to look impressive for the audience. He's trying to get back on TV repeatedly. You know, he's 15-0 with 14 knockouts now. And, I mean, that speaks well to him. You know, he's a TV-friendly fighter. So, I think he'll probably go pretty far. I mean, he has potential stardom on the horizon. Whether it's at 130 or 135. 135 is probably going to be the easier division because, I mean, it'll be easier for him to make because he's a very stocky dude in spite of the fact that he's only 5'6" at lightweight, which is, you know, it's not too short, but it's on the short side. So, you know, he's probably going to be looking up against most of his opponents, but he's a stocky fighter. You know, he's a guy that's well built, well muscled, very strong. He's going to be physically stronger, most likely on the inside than most of his, you know, taller, lankier, thinner, slighter of build opponents. So, I mean, that speaks well for him. You know, of course, he's a southpaw. He's a power punching southpaw. He's got good power in the right hook and the left hand. The right hook is pretty nasty, actually. He's got a pretty educated right hook for a southpaw. A lot of guys, they don't really know how to use that hook, especially well, but he's pretty solid with it. Might actually be his best punch, incidentally. The way he's able to kind of you know, bend his knees, load up on it, almost like a little bit of a mini Tyson, just in a reversed stance. Then, of course, we had Robert Easter Jr. versus Adrien Mendez, and he took Mendez out in pretty impressive fashion. I mean, this was a good fight for him. Mendez, of course, is a former champion. Had that controversial knockout loss, which got turned into a no contest against Francis Barthélemy back when he was a champion at 130. Then they had the rematch. Barthélemy hurt him repeatedly, but he didn't get him out of there the second time. He wound up beating him by decision. And he had the fight with Arash Usmani from Afghanistan, I believe. And that was a great fight between him and Usmani. That was a really good fight. But then Usmani went on to get pretty much pieced up and dominated by Ray Beltran at 135. So, I mean, that didn't necessarily speak too well for Mendez's chances moving up, especially against a guy in Robert Easter Jr., who is a very tall lightweight. It's like you had a guy in Mendez who was a tall super featherweight going up in weight against an even taller lightweight. You know, so that wasn't the greatest situation for him. And Robert Easter showed it by bombing him out with right hands. Although Mendez put up a pretty good fight himself, landed some pretty good left hooks and right hands of his own, especially as Easter started to tire after a few rounds. It seemed like Easter was a little bit too anxious to get him out of there. Almost a little bit like Davis, incidentally. Although, really, in Easter's case, he probably should have been a little more cautious with regard to his stamina because, you know, if he was starting to slow down and those right hands were repeatedly connected from Mendez, which they were, it could have spelled trouble for him later on. But Mendez is a guy that, you know, he's chinny, and in spite of the fact that he's racked up a couple good wins of his own, that, you know, the fact that he has that bit of a chin issue was not going to fare well for him against a guy like Robert Easter, who can legit bang. You know, he's a guy that can hit at 135. I mean, he even said it himself before this fight even happened. Robert Easter Jr. said, "I have a body that can go from 135 to 154 for no problem." So, I mean, hopefully those words don't haunt him in the future, as some fighters recently have had, you know, things like that haunt them with saying that they'll fight at any weight or whatever, like Golovkin, for instance. You know, hopefully Easter will get a shot. I'm sure he will, because, I mean, he's in the money position. You know, he's with PBC, he's with Heyman. So, and lightweight doesn't really have, like, any, like, major superstars that are really able to call the shots like that. So I'm sure he'll get a shot sooner or later. And I imagine it'll probably be coming fairly soon. I mean, he just knocked out a former world champion in Mendez, so I'd be willing to bet that he'll probably get a shot against one of the current world champs at 135 fairly soon. I know Jorge Linares is tied in with Heyman. He's had a couple fights on some of the PBC undercards, and in spite of the fact that his main promoter is still taking promotions in Japan, I could see a Linares versus Robert Easter fight in the future. That'd be an excellent fight. I could also see him fighting Francis Barthélemy, since Barthélemy is with Heyman, of course. Barthélemy, I believe, is supposed to be fighting at 140 coming up soon, though. I can't remember exactly who he was supposed to be fighting against, or if he even had one penned up on the schedule yet. I'm pretty sure he was trying to go after one of the champions, but I don't think that was set in stone necessarily. So it could be fighting Barthélemy, or even fighting against somebody for the vacant belt. Although I believe there's a rumor that Felix Verdejo versus Jose Felix Jr. may be coming about for like an interim title if Francis winds up vacating that. So that might be problematic for Robert Easter to fit in there. But Anthony Crolla and Terry Flanagan, both from the UK, could be potential opponents for him too. So that may work out for him. And then, of course, we had Adrien Broner piecing up and taking out Ashley Theophane in pretty impressive fashion. Well, I mean, I'd say impressive for his shape anyway. I mean, you could tell that he wasn't in the greatest shape. He was getting a little bit winded himself. It seemed like to be the story of the night with these guys. And he was just loading up on shots, man. He felt like pretty much he could get Theophane out of there whenever he pleased, and that kind of turned out to be the case. I mean, Theophane was outworking him. He maybe nicked a round or two just based on outworking Broner, because Broner had a lot of lulls in his action. Possibly due to draining himself at the last minute, possibly due to not being in the best condition overall. Probably a combination of those two situations. I mean, Broner, as I mentioned in one of Mr. Boxing Today's videos, on the video where he was talking about Broner missing weight, Broner's weighed as much as, I believe, 157 on fight night. So, I mean, he's not a small guy. A lot of people, they want to give Broner these passes for losing to Porter and Maidana because, they were bigger than him and all that stuff. But, okay, yeah, they both weighed a few pounds heavier than him in the ring, but it was only like 4 or 5 pounds. Broner at 140 has outweighed most of his opponents, and even going all the way back to when he fought Daniel Ponce de Leon at 130 pounds. Broner was 148 pounds on fight night. So, I mean, if he's gaining 18 pounds overnight, I mean, you could tell that, that 130 is not a natural weight for him. 135 is not a natural weight for him. 140, that's still cutting it a bit close, I mean, that's the type of weight where, like, even if you were walking around in the 150s, where if you got pneumonia and got dehydrated over a few days, I mean, yeah, you'd make 140, but you wouldn't be in optimal shape, ready to fucking rumble in a world championship fight at 140, if you know what I mean. So, I mean, Broner did his thing though. He knocked out Theophane. He called out Floyd Mayweather, and I mean that makes sense. Everybody wants the big paydays. Everybody's trying to get it. And Broner's a famous enough fighter. He has enough of a following that he can kind of put himself in the lottery, so to speak, for that. Albeit Floyd's general track of things is he tends to fight guys that are actual champions. He tends to fight guys that are either coming off big wins or are world champions. Really, the only exceptions in that rule in the last, I don't know, 5-6 years maybe, since Zab Judah was Andre Berto. Everybody else was a reigning champion coming off of a good win when Floyd went in to fight against them. I mean, Baldomir was coming off the wins against Judah and Gaddy. Marquez was coming off a fight of the year against Juan Diaz. Shane Mosley was coming off just knocking out Margarito, and so on and so forth. So most of these guys had good wins prior to fighting Floyd, and they were all champions pretty much, except for Andre Berto. Although him beating Josito Lopez was a pretty good win, in spite of the fact that I thought the ref stopped that a little bit early, and I thought he was losing pretty bad until he managed to kind of dig himself out of that hole. But in any case, I mean, Broner, I know that there were some rumors going around, people talking about him fighting Danny Garcia. I think that would be an excellent fight, man. I think that would be an excellent fight. They both have the same weakness, which is guys who are able to press them and fight on the inside against them. Broner and Garcia are the type that like to kind of stand their ground and counterpunch you. They don't really like to move forward or go backward too much. I think Garcia is a little bit more comfortable going backward than Broner. He has a little bit better feet, going backward at least. Broner has a little bit better feet coming forward. So I think Broner would probably have a little bit of an advantage inside, but mid-range Garcia's pretty much unbeatable at mid-range. I mean, he's very tough to beat at mid-range. I'll just put it that way. You have to really be a very educated fighter to be able to trade with somebody like Danny Garcia at mid-range, because it's just his timing is perfect. I mean, he's a guy that lulls you to sleep, and he even though some of those punches look telegraphed, it's like he'll throw them in such a way where it's like at that perfect spot where you just don't expect it to come. And I mean, he has enough thudding power where even if you see the punch coming, he can still hurt you. He can really bang at that weight. I mean, he's a bona fide puncher, man. You can't take that away from him. Broner's a bit more of a snappy shot guy. He's a guy that catches you with speed, and the speed of the punch is really what hurts you more than just the thudding force. I think that would be an excellent fight. I think Broner against a lot of these guys would be a good fight. I mean, really, that fight against Sean Porter wasn't. It wasn't the greatest fight, but it wasn't a terrible fight. I mean, Broner dropped Sean Porter. I mean, so he can crack a little bit. I mean, once he's able to catch you. So, I imagine Broner versus Garcia would probably be the fight that would potentially be made fairly soon. And this is a fight that I've wanted for a couple years now. I mean, this is like the world star shit fight. This is like really what Broner versus Guerrero should have been a few years ago, and what Garcia versus Guerrero should have been if they had built it right, with the fathers talking shit to each other or whatever. But at least with this, Broner can talk his own shit, in spite of the fact that Danny isn't really much of a shit talker himself. But, I mean, I like Garcia versus Broner. I hope that comes off. If not, maybe Broner possibly against the winner of Thurman versus Sean Porter. I mean, there's other guys that he could potentially fight. I'd imagine they might get him a little bit of a softer touch at 147 before going after one of the big dogs. But you never know. I mean, Broner has seemed to piss off a lot of people. And possibly some pretty powerful people. I mean, the very fact that he's going at Floyd the way he is, considering the fact that Floyd is as tight with Heyman the way he is, I'd be willing to bet that in a certain way that Broner might be somewhat persona non grata. He might be putting himself in a sticky situation as far as getting an ideal matchup as far as he himself goes. So, I mean, him versus Garcia, excellent opportunity for him, and really a good opportunity for Garcia. I think it's a big fight. It's a good money fight. The crowd will be raucous. The crowd will be there ready to see two guys just throw it down, man. I mean, it's an intriguing fight, too. It's a very intriguing fight. And I mean, just the fanfare, I think, would be excellent. I think it'll be a great atmosphere for all the people there live. I'm sure that'll translate into the TV screens and everything, too. And I'd be willing to bet that the winner would probably wind up fighting Mayweather if Mayweather chooses to come out of retirement. I'd imagine that he'd be the type that the winner of a fight between those two would be the type that Floyd would go after, because it would be a bit of a spectacle. It would get a bit more of the casual fan acceptance, a little bit of the casual fan attention, more so than a lot of other fights. If only just for, I guess you might call it the dumb shit, just them talking shit, mouthing off back to each other and everything. Because, I mean, it's always fun to watch. So, I mean, we'll see how Broner does from here. We'll see how Davis and Easter do as well. I'm anxious to see those two in particular in the future. They're both undefeated. They're both where Broner was a few years ago. So we'll see how they progress into their careers, and then we'll see how Broner winds up turning out. I mean, a lot of people have been talking about his career may be over soon, but I mean, he's not taking a lying down. So, I mean, as long as he fights, it's gonna be interesting. And against somebody like a Garcia, somebody like an Amir Khan, potentially in the future. I mean, although Khan, of course, has Canelo problems now. Who knows? Maybe Errol Spence or Sammy Vasquez even. Any of those guys. I think Broner's just an intriguing guy to watch. So we'll see how it goes, and I'll catch you on the next.